The World Rally Championship has just begun, and with that, this colorful category, which has seen over 50 years since its inception, has had its great season opener in two of the most popular events in the calendar. The first one being one of the most historically important and prestigious events in the history of rallying, which passes through some of the most iconic trails of the category itself, crossing through the roads of the French Alps to later descent into the historical Principality of Monaco, the drivers having to make way in the tight roads of Montecarlo, where the adverse weather translates into the slippery asphalt covered by the snow and hazardous layers of ice, as they have to carefully plan their strategies around their choice of tires. The event, which usually follows, on the other hand, takes place in Scandinavian territory, where its roads made of ice and snow makes it for one of the most demanding rallies of all time, as not only do the drivers have to make the best out of their skills behind the wheel, their visual perception is also put to the test, as the pale white scenery makes it hard to distinguish the difference between the roads and the massive banks of snow surrounding them. And though these two rallies share plenty of similarities due to the cold weather and the adversities imposed over their participants, its most interesting parallelism comes from its list of winning cars, as these were the scenarios for the rise of one of the most curious automobiles to have ever participated in this championship, and sometime later it would be refined to establish one of the most unexpected title fights in motorsports history, at a time where one of the greatest regulations in the category had come into effect, paving the way for the creation of some of the most powerful and innovative cars the championship had ever seen, rising to levels of popularity never seen before, thanks to its combination of rallies and drivers as grueling and colorful as those fabled machines. This is the story of the last car from the old Vanguard to ever win a championship. The earliest records of Opel's success in rallying can be traced all the way back to 1966, when Lillebror Nasenius would drive a record B to win that year's European Championship in the Group 1 class. Said Swedish driver would extend his association with the brand very well into the 70s, giving them their first podium in the 1970 Swedish Rally, which was a points-paying event accountable towards the International Championship for Manufacturers. The Rüsselsheim brand seeing its best result later that year with a second place obtained by yet another Swedish driver, Ove Eriksson, in the RAC Rally. It would be from this series where the World Rally Championship would stem in 1973, in which Opel would make their presence, though this time with a new vehicle, that being the Ascona, a small sedan introduced to the market in 1970, which was named after a municipality localized in the Italian-speaking canton of Ticino in Switzerland. The brand having previously sold some editions of their cars with the same name in the aforementioned country. However, as interesting as its name was, the same couldn't be said about its results, which were moderate at best. Though, around this time period, the Ascona would become one of the most dominant cars in the European Championship, all thanks to the efforts made by a certain driver from Regensburg. After suffering an accident in a skiing competition, Walter Grl would make the definite jump to rallying in the late 60s as a privateer, later becoming a works driver for Ford, managing to obtain excellent results in the German Championship, and after making his debut the following year with a win and consistent results in the European Championship, Grl would later swap the Capri for an Ascona, with which he would achieve plenty of success in the regional category. and in 1974 he would go on to win more than 5 rallies en route to winning the title. Later on, he would achieve his first World Championship win in the 1975 Rally Acropolis, taking place in Greece, this being Opel's first win, right during Lancia's dominance period with the Stratos. The happiness for the Hüsselheim manufacturer would be rather brief, however, as despite the cadet's return to rallying in over 5 years, the lack of reliability would translate in horrible performances for Opel, with Hrl finishing a single rally, that being the 1976 Montecarlo in 4th, as well as a lone win in the European Championship. Not conform with that, he would part ways with the brand, making the jump to Fiat 2 years later, as the Germans were now scratching their heads wondering about the future of the rallying program, with its team director, British former rally driver Tony Fall, decided to set a clear path by making the following proposal. Opel would simultaneously develop 2 cars, those being the Ascona and Menta models, both on their P generations, the former being used for this new project thanks to its better weight distribution and results obtained in the European Championship. And with that, a new edition would be prepared with the aid of 2 important collaborators, those being German tuner Irmscha, which would have the role of modifying the bodywork as well as the interior, whilst British engineering company Cosworth, known for their crucial role in developing the Ford Escort, would be in charge of creating a new motor. However, with the lack of proper time, they would take the old 2-liter engine used in the Kadett, originally developed for Formula 2 racing, and reform it through an extensive series of modifications, including an increase in bore to over 2400 cc's, which in turn would pave the way for a new kit of internals, consisting in a crankshaft from Opel's 2.3-liter diesel engine, along with forged conrods and pistons. And on top of that, a 16-valve cylinder head would be placed in the motor that would power the now known Opel Ascona B400, which would enter production in late 1979. Its 400 homologation units equipped with a Bosch fuel injection system coming from the Manta GSI, delivering a whopping 145 horsepower. Its rallying version, however, was obviously different, the latter having a set of twin Weber carburetors and producing an incredible amount of over 240 horsepower, the new car making its debut in the 1980 Monte Carlo Rally, where one of the works drivers, Anders Kulleng, would finish 4th in the car's first outing, and in the following rally taking place in Sweden, Kulleng would surprise just about anyone as he would take the Ascona to a comfortable victory at home. However, plenty of misfortunes and teething problems would limit Opel's success, its further results being a handful of podiums in the following season. But this wasn't much of a loss for them, as they would further their project to optimize their car's performance in one of the most competitive national championships at the time. Thanks to the merging of their marketing departments, General Motors Eurosport had decided to introduce the new Ascona 400 in Great Britain, which would be driven by none other than Scottish prospect Jimmy McRae, who would take it to an excellent debut in the first round of the 81 season, and after a win in the Circuit of Ireland Rally, along with season-long consistent results, there would be no opposition for McRae in his championship quest, managing to beat the local Vauxhall Chevette, as he would manage to successfully defend his title the following year. But whilst Opel had made their conquest across the continent, one of their greatest rivals had surged in the World Championship. Initially thought to be heavy and unreliable, the Audi Quattro would make its debut in 1981, achieving its first victory in the Swedish Rally, of which many excused it due to the advantages of its 4-wheel drive system in the snowy Scandinavian trails. However, the subsequent wins in the San Remo and RAC rallies achieved by Michel Mouton and Hannu Mikkola had shown the car's earlier yet promising efficiency in the sport, with many of the critics now affirming the age of the supercar had just begun. They had the best car in almost every sense, and some of the best drivers of its era. They were the clear favorites to win the championship. What they didn't count, however, was Opel's surprise the following year. It would be the first year in which the World Rally Championship would be run under Group B regulations, subsequently prompting the creation of some of the most incredible cars ever seen. But by this point, the category consisted of cars from the previous Group 4 regs, their homologation now extended for brands to maintain the use of these cars for the time being. With this, Audi would bring back the Quattro in its initial phase, which would be driven by a variety of drivers throughout the season, whilst keeping its full-time lineup composed by Mikola and Mouton. On the other hand, Opel would retain the Ascona, now with sponsorship from Rothmans. And though different drivers would have a go with it, their most important figure would be that of a familiar face who had given them their first taste of success, being none other than Walter Grl, who had achieved his first driver's title with Fiat just 2 years prior, and signed with Mercedes for the 81 season, only for the Silver Arrows to withdraw from the sport, forcing the Bavarian to sign with Porsche, who would occasionally drive in different championships across the European continent, as well as making his debut in circuit racing. The season couldn't have started any better, with Grl de Montemeister having a dominant run to win the Montecarlo rally, with the unexpected warm weather giving him a massive advantage against the Audis, with Mikola making a sensational charge to the front and finishing second after suffering a puncture along with a broken driveshaft, though the roles would be reversed for the brands in the following round, with Stig Blomqvist winning the Swedish rally for the Ingolstadt brand, whilst Grl would go on to take the final podium position in third. From the cold trails of the Alps and Scandinavia, the championship would now go to the mixed roads of Portugal, where Audi's Michèle Mouton would show a dominant display of driving, stating her intentions to fight for the title, whereas Opel would have a rather disgraceful week for each and every one of their drivers, including Grl, who would suffer an accident in the latter stages of the event. However, the Regensburg driver would have its luck flipped out once he arrived to Nairobi for the Safari Rally, in which Audi wouldn't participate due to skepticism regarding their reliability issues, as Opel would manage to achieve a runner-up finish in the toughest event of the calendar, held in the harsh terrains of Kenya. The French dominated the Tour de Corse, though Mouton wouldn't be included in this, as she would finish a distant 7th, whilst Grl wounded up in 4th, these two having a 1-2 finish at the Acropolis Rally, with the French woman performing rather amazingly, taking advantage from the tough conditions of the Greek roads. Despite Audi's superiority in technology, reliability issues would hamper the team's efforts, this being reflected in the New Zealand Rally, where both drivers would retire after convincingly leading for the most part, as Grl would take advantage of the attrition to finish third. And later on, the championship would make their sole trip to the American continent for the Brazilian Rally, where once again, a 1-2 finish would be made by the Acropolis duo, led by Mouton once more, now 15 points behind her German rival. The following round, however, would be one to forget, as the Thousand Lakes Rally had seen Grl's absence due to his distaste towards the steep roads Finland has ever offered, with Mouton crashing in the latter stages, whilst Mikola comfortably dominated in his home soil, as the championship made the trip to San Remo, where Grl would finish once again in third, right ahead of Mouton, who'd do no better than fourth. Along with Blomqvist's couple of wins in Sweden and San Remo, Audi had tasted victory 6 times against Opel's lone win at Monaco. And in this epic fight for the title, 2 figures with contrasting machinery and approaches were in it. The cold and calculative Grl, who had played the consistency card all season, and the rather determined Mouton, willing to charge all the way up front. With only 29 points separating the 2 drivers, the dust would be settled in the following round. It was the penultimate rally of the season, taking place in the Ivory Coast. Its harsh terrains and scenery offered the same difficulties previously seen in the Safari Rally, and Audi, very aware of their situation, would send their 2 drivers down to Africa, with Micola's Quattro having the alternate purpose of serving for emergency repairs. On the other hand, Hrl would be partnered by Sweden's Björn Johansson for the same reason in one of the toughest rallies of its time, which would be split in 4 legs consisting of 54 controls scattered across the country, each and every of the legs starting throughout the night, where the darkness would cover the hot and humid Ivorian roads, with the added risk of animals roaming around, as well as a wide margin for error and mechanical failures, which ultimately affected every single contestant of this rally, of which only 6 of the 45 starters managed to make it through the finish line. Right from the start, Mouton would be one of the quickest in the first leg, from which the drivers would start from the coastal city of Abidjan all the way up to the Ivorian capital of Yamoussoukro, and after the run of his compatriot Jean Ragnoti suffered a half-shaft failure, Mouton would inherit the lead, from which she would hold on to the final leg, where aside from the constant problems she would suffer in her Audi, the mental strain would take a toll on her, partly due to the provocative comments made by Hrl after the Brazilian rally, and most importantly, the death of her father a few days before her arrival, culminating in a disheartening accident right in the final part of the rally. Meanwhile, Hrl had a decent start to the Bandama, having charged all the way up to second in the latter parts, which would be enough for him to secure the crown. However, with Mouton's retirement, he would do so with an incredible victory, not only achieving Opel's first title in their long yet erratic history in world-class rallying, but also becoming the first driver to ever win 2 titles in the World Rally Championship. And though Audi would take the Constructors' Championship as a consolation prize with a dominant run in the RAC Rally, Opel's goals had been successfully achieved. Despite this, however, Hrl would be fired after winning the title for refusing to take part in the last round of the season, citing his bad performances in Britain as one of his reasons. As a result, the Bavarian would be replaced by 1981 champion Ari Vatanen, who couldn't replicate Hrl's success in the midst of the war between Audi and Lancia in '83. However, he would manage to give Opel's final display of greatness in the Safari Rally, where despite the upgrades their rivals had delivered, reliability issues would clear the path for the Finnish driver to take the final win for the venerable Ascona, as it was forcibly replaced by the Manta, though unfortunately the new car was nowhere near the Group B's new Vanguard, never delivering a single world-class win in its tenure. Gone would be the conventional cars and in came the Untameables, though the old Vanguard managed to achieve their last hooray in their fading light, that being 1982, the year of the Opel Ascona.